Hello and welcome to the first edition, if you will, of AutoAudiography. This was an idea, a brainchild, if you will, of Run with Comics. Running with comics, runs with comics, jogging with comics, sprinting with comics, driving with comics. Well, we decided we were both going to do this, and came up with the brilliant name of AutoAudiography, which messes with my mouth, so we'll see how that goes. And this is basically talking about albums that have impacted our life, influenced our life, maybe been a constant in our life. I don't know how real I'm going to get. I don't know how personal I'm going to get here. I'm feeling out what I'm going to do. I have nothing prepared, but I'm just going to hop right in. The first album, and it's going to be one album per video. I'm not going to go through albums. So the first video will be about Anti-Flag's Die for the Government. This is Pittsburgh-based Anti-Flag's debut album, came out in 1996. I probably didn't get a hold of this album until 2001, 2002, when, right in that time frame when you're, starting to figure out who you are. And this album was very influential to me. I dabbled in punk before this, but I never really explored it. But I saw the cover of this album drew me right in. Justin Sane, Pat Thedek, and Andy Flagg were the members of Anti-Flag at this point, and the cover drew me in immediately. There were a lot of problems at home for me. There was addiction problems at home, and it was hard to rebel against something. So I kind of found the easiest thing that I could rebel against would be just kind of society in general. Because there wasn't much rebelling at home because there was nothing to rebel against. There was no real restrictions of what I could do. I mean, we may get into that later, but punk really called to me, and this album in particular really, really spoke to me. It's a 17-track LP, 17-track album that can tell you how short some of these songs are. The title track, Die for the Government, is phenomenal. I mean, the whole album goes through being a punk culture, do-it-yourself culture, the normal punk aspects, political punk aspects of there's conspiracy, the government's out to get us, the military is wrong, we want peace, but we're going to fight for peace. This album was so important to me because if there was ever a time when I wanted something angry, if I wanted something that I felt like spoke to my angst that I had at the time, this album did it. I would put this album on at all times, and it just took me away from everything, but also made me more present by allowing me to figure out a version of myself that maybe I wanted to be, but it was the version of myself I was at the time. In addition to the crazy punkery, I just made that word up, there was a thing, and I didn't have this on vinyl at the time. I had it on CD, compact digital disc. But in the songbook, or in the liner notes, if you will, there's a thing in here that really spoke to me and played a big role in not being this alcoholic waste of life, just piece of shit punk who wanted to go break shit just for the sake of breaking shit. I live near Pittsburgh, so this band also, it spoke to me more because they were close to home, if you will. But all the songs also focus on not being just a piece of shit and not being just a waste. How to use what, the culture to get forward and to succeed and overcome. But there is a little thing in here, a little statement, if you will, that like anybody who got a new album when I was 12, 13 years old, 11, 12, 13 years old, when I got this album, I religiously went through the lyric sheet. I religiously read the whole book front to back many, many times while listening to the album. Just a little thing. It's called "It's Okay Not to Be a Dick." And I'm just going to read this through and then maybe touch a little bit as I go about what it meant to me. Recently, the Chatham Coffee House was kind enough to let one of the local punks book a great hardcore show, giving some of Pittsburgh's finest a chance to be heard by all us Yinzers. It would be lovely to say that the music was great, the show was fun, and a good time was had by all, but that is not the case. Sure, the music was excellent, but the show was not fun, not for the people who put it on. As it was an all-ages show, they had to be careful to ensure there was no drinking going on, or the coffee house could get shut down. To this end, they posted no alcohol signs everywhere, but many assholes came in with their beers, completely disregarding what effect their need to be seen drinking could have on the scene. In addition, someone smashed a whiskey bottle and another person took some cups that belonged to the coffee house, which was nice enough not only to provide free admission but also free coffee, and smashed those too. To top it all, some ass monkey decided to steal the radio belonging to the two girls who put on the free show. For all their trouble, did the girls get a thanks for letting us have the show here? No. They've got a big mess to clean up and a lot of worries about who to replace their roommate's radio. I imagine this scenario happened all over the country, all over the world when there was a punk show. Just punks, like I said, just being destructive for the sake of being destructive. It goes on to say, needless to say, the Chatham Coffee House will no longer be having any more hardcore punk shows. This is not the first time this has happened. One club shut down because someone ripped a condom machine off the wall. Pitt stopped having shows after someone burned a flag. Another space after one show stopped having them because somebody felt they needed to carve on their walls. The list goes on and on and on. It all adds up to one thing. There is nowhere to have shows in Pittsburgh. It's amazing. I run a mail order distribution of punk records, and the people from all over the world write to me and tell me how lucky I am to live in the same town as Alice Rotten and Anti-Flag. Little do they know that I can never see these two bands because every time there's a show, someone has to do something stupid to get it shut down. I know many of the people who put a lot of work into the scene, I do not want to see it destroyed by someone who thinks that punk is nothing more than a mohawk, a sneer, and a bad attitude. This is what really took this to the next level for me, because coming into it, I was interested in the punk aspects. I was very interested in the mohawks. I was very interested in just the whole culture. But when he started talking about this, about how it's not this horrible attitude. These are upright human beings. At least the good ones are. Folks, alternative is a fashion. Punk is a community. It's the corporate presidents, politicians, and lawyers that are fucking each other over for their own immediate personal gain. How punk is it to try to emulate that? How punk is it to act like the schoolyard bully in the mosh pit? How punk is it to plunge a knife into the backs of the few people that support you instead of trying to control you? If punk is all about worrying more about instant gratification than the long-term consequences of your actions, then Exxon Valdez is the punkest thing that ever happened. Now, looking back, I don't think I knew anything about Exxon Valdez. Reading that now, that's pretty funny. But the whole thing about punk is a brotherhood, which I found out very soon after I got into this album and was really into it. I met people who are still my best friends in the scene. I mean, I consider my brother. I mean, I met my brother basically through punk. I was on the school bus. I don't know if I had a shirt on or something, and he called me over. I remember this very vividly. He called me over to sit by him, and I remember saying, "Wow, this is strange," because he was older than I was, and it was the first time. I mean, I've always been socially awkward, but it was the first time I've ever felt comfortable, if you will, talking to a stranger, and we kind of clicked immediately, and then the long friendship has just gone on, and I still consider him my brother, and he's one of my best friends in the world, and he always will be, no matter what happens. So the question is, what do we do about it? I'm not sure. I've never had much of a fondness for police and don't have much of a desire to act as one. But that may be what has to happen. Racist skinheads rarely come to punk shows anymore because the majority of the scene took a stand and said Nazis are not welcome here. Perhaps this is what we have to do now. When you're standing at a show and you see someone drinking beer openly, get in their face and tell them to take it outside. Far outside. If you see someone destroying the property of the club, don't look the other way. Call everyone's attention to it. Let them know that they are not part of our scene. Don't let a few fuck-ups ruin the punk scene for all the people that actually care. I hate to be typing this. I shouldn't need to. This is all common sense. Punk is about supporting each other, not tearing each other down. Punk is about helping to build something, to be part of something ours, not given to us by the schools, the churches, the youth groups, the government centers, something that we have, something that we make, that we define, and we control. But if we let these few MTV-loving mainstream jock assholes in punk clothing continue to fuck up our clubs, pretty soon we won't have anything left at all. And the straightforward talk about just wanting to have something, to do, I really adjusted not adjusted. I really had empathy for that because I grew up in a very small town. I never had anything to do. And then with the problems at home, it was interesting to see that there were people out there who were still good, but they weren't the people that I was looking up to, because I still at this time I didn't the people that we're looking up to weren't necessarily, don't get me wrong, as loving as any parents could ever be, but they weren't necessarily the most what's the word I'm trying to look for here, they weren't the most around. They weren't kind of in the conscious thought of life at the time for me. So this album kind of made me look at everything differently. And this album made me try to enjoy things that I never thought I would enjoy before. This album introduced me to people that I never thought I would meet that are still some of the biggest parts of my life. When I knew I was going to do this, I dug around in a closet and actually came up with this. And this thing is ancient, but in the punk community, the DIY community, you make denim vests, you put studs on them. There were a lot of patches on here that got sacrificed for other things, I guess. But as the leopard print on the collar, the classic vest. If you were in the scene, you had to have the vest. And I had the vest, I had the chains, I had the boots, everything. Punk played a bigger role in my life than I could ever imagine, because, I mean, I gained respect as myself, even though I was following this kind of counterculture and I was part of a counterculture. I still was myself somehow through it. Like I was put on a trial, kind of, if you will, in high school, middle school, and let's go junior high. In junior high, when I wore combat boots with studs on them, for some reason it was okay to have studs on the clothing, but if they were on the boots, they were seen as a weapon. And I basically pled my case and was allowed to wear them. It wasn't an issue. So I intelligently became my own person. Did this probably impact my life in a negative way in some aspects? Maybe. I mean, some of the songs are about getting completely shit faced and just having fun, and I did a lot of that way too early. I may talk about that in later videos. I don't know if I'm extremely comfortable talking about that now, but um, there were some dark times in the past as well. I think there may be a few albums that I may get to talk about that. But I didn't know how long I wanted to make this. I don't know if they'll all be this long. I don't know if they'll be longer. I don't know if I'll redo this. But Anti-Flag Die for the Government was an extremely important album to me. And I can't thank the band Anti-Flag enough for that. Because they made anything in my past made me who I am. And if they were a big part of my past, they're a big part of who I am today. So, thank you, punk rock. Thank you, punk community. And I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think. Um, Thank you for watching. I'm not going to salute, because that would not be the punk thing to do. So, give a sneer and a finger. I've never holded that long.